Okay, I'm going to try to do this on my phone. I've tried using my computer. I've tried videoing directly to Canvas. Nothing has been working. So sorry I'm late on this. I did post my text last night. Well, I've been trying to get this worked out. I'm just having major technical difficulties. So here we go. My first response. According to the essay Gender in the Bible by Mark V. Brettler, ancient Israelite women played secondary roles in society. They were, quote, subordinate to their father or husband, unquote, and were treated as property. Brettler 2180. While there are examples of women who exhibited what are considered masculine traits in the Bible, such as the Israelite judge Deborah, most women in the Bible are depicted as feminine, and femininity was considered inferior to masculinity. However, what Brettler did not mention in his essay is how some women in the Bible use this femininity to empower themselves, in particular over men. The story of Ruth is a good example. Historically, widows existed independent of men, though they lacked the financial support of a male who could provide for them. Naomi, recently widowed, understood this and took full advantage of the male hierarchy in Israel. Ruth, her recently widowed daughter-in-law, goes to work in a field owned by Boaz, a wealthy kinsman to Naomi. When Naomi learns this, she advises Ruth on the Israelite customs of how to catch a man. Quote, when he lies down, go over and uncover his feet and lie down, unquote. Ruth 3:5. Ruth obeys, but when Boaz discovers her, Ruth takes her mother-in-law's instructions even further by proposing marriage. Quote, spread your robe over your handmaid, for... I always do that, speaking like an English professor, for you are a redeeming kinsman, unquote. Ruth 3:9 and see note AA. Ruth and Naomi exhibit qualities shared by many women in the Bible, such as Delilah, who seduces Samson, and Esther, who uses her beauty to win her husband King's favor on behalf of her people. Even the female midwives of the Hebrews, who lied to the Egyptian soldiers and saved the lives of countless infants, showed unexpected courage and resourcefulness. Israelite women might have been considered inferior to men, but they often use that position of inferiority to its fullest. Response number 2. I agree that Ruth, Esther, and Jonah all reveal a more cosmopolitan attitude in the Bible. First, Jonah, an Israelite prophet, is called to warn Nineveh that God is about to punish them for their wickedness. When they repent, much to Jonah's dismay, readers of the Bible see for the first time non-Israelites in a positive light. Until that moment, most non-Israelites have been considered Israel's enemies, pagans who worship false gods. But the Ninevites clearly respect Jonah's God enough to believe his words of warning, and God shows them mercy. Quote, and should I not care about Nineveh, that great city? Unquote. Jonah 4:11. If God looks kindly on those who were once enemies of Israel, perhaps the Hebrews should too. Ruth takes this idea of looking at foreigners even farther. Naomi, her husband, and sons are Hebrew, but live in the Canaanite nation of Moab. Her sons marry Moabite women, which is the first indication that non-Israelites are not always looked down on. When Boaz's workers introduce Ruth to him, he isn't the slightest bit surprised or shocked that she isn't Jewish. In fact, he is kind and fatherly to her. Quote, Boaz said to the servant who was in charge of the reapers, whose girl is that? The servant in charge of the reapers replied, she is a Moabite girl who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. Boaz said to Ruth, listen, my daughter, don't glean in another field. I have ordered the men not to molest you. Ruth 2:5-6 and 8-9. The story of Ruth reveals a positive view about the intermarriage between Israelite and Moabite. But that might be explained by the fact that Ruth chooses to follow her mother-in-law to Bethlehem, where she, in effect, converts to Judaism. The book of Esther is perhaps the strongest argument for the cosmopolitan views of non-Israelites. Esther is a Jew living in the post-diaspora Persian Empire. Not only does she marry the Persian king Ahasuerus, but she is viewed as a heroine for saving her people from certain genocide. Yet there is no evidence that Esther was any more than an ethnic Jew. There is no mention of prayer or worship, no mention of God's intervention, or of Esther asking God for assistance. She doesn't even tell her husband at first that she is Jewish, and there seems to be no evidence on her part that would lead him to believe that she is. Esther is the most non-Israelite Israelite in the Bible. Yet her story shines a positive light on the Persian Empire, not on Haman, of course. In fact, the opening of the book refers to Ahasuerus' reign as, quote, the splendid glory of his majesty, unquote, Esther 1:4. Of course, in the cases of Ruth and Esther, the positive views they create make sense in that they were written after the diaspora, when the Jews spent 70 years intermingling with the Persians and living alongside them, blending cultures and languages and possibly even religions. Even so, it is interesting that these 3 books were included in the Bible at all, in seeming conflict with the isolationism of the Moses-era Bible. Let's see if this works.